Welcome to Cause Before Symptom with your host, James Carner.
Ports of Babylon, the siege has no flag. We're going to talk about the borders and the ports. Stick around. Welcome to Cause Before Symptom. I'm your host, James Carner. Today is October 6th, 2025. Tonight's episode is all about the ports and Donald Trump and the National Guard. Why he's really going in there. I think there's a lot more to the story, and I don't think it has to do with Antifa. Yeah, I think it has to do with the Lee family and their control of the ports. And we can't have China control of America ports, so yeah, they're gonna war against this. And I've heard rumors that Trump may, initiate some insurrection act. Well, he didn't do it last time, so how can we trust he's going to do it this time? Shout out to everybody on the live chat Rumble. Number one, Warrior is Scorpion saying, church is now in session. Hi, Pastor. What is up, Scorpion? Glad to have you here. Number two, Warrior is Boots After, the Spleef Sparker, saying, Warriors, come out and pray, yay. Class is in session. Hello, Pastor James of the Airways and Warrior family. Hoping everyone is feeling blessed. All right. And let's hit that thumbs up button. Yeah, please hit the thumbs up button. That's the only way that Rumble will appreciate me. Otherwise, the algorithm will keep me far below anyone to see. And number three, Warrior is Sheila saying, sup, Buttercups. Number five, Warrior is Claire saying, hi. What's going on, peeps? Glad you guys are here with us. So we're going to be talking all about the ports of Babylon. It's a mess what's really going on, and it really depends on, is Trump going to do something about it? Does he have the balls? I mean, here's the synopsis of the whole thing. We're going to basically unveil how modern warfare has transcended battlefields and borders to manifest in contracts and logistics and the silent capture of our infrastructure. And tonight, the ports of Babylon. It reveals how the globalist powers and spiritual principalities and ancient dynasties have shifted the nature of conquest from military occupation to economic enslavement. That's what we're facing today. So it's going to be an interesting show and a long one. So let's go ahead and quickly get into breaking shitty news.
Welcome to Shitty Breaking News with your host, James Carner, offering his shitty opinion.
Yeah, it is. Illinois and Chicago sue to block Trump's deployment of National Guard, but troops continue to get sent. Yeah. What's funny is today we learned that Trump sent the California National Guard to Oregon, and they just showed up, and now everyone's having a fit. Well, we'll see what happens. Is Trump going to do the Insurrection Act? I don't know. I have no clue. But what I do know is he's a pussy, and I don't think he's got the balls to take on the deep state. I just don't. I think he's in way over his head. And no, there are no white hats or Q phenomenon of people that are saving America. Because if there was, then Biden wouldn't have spent, $8 trillion just out of the blue. Okay, we can't spend our way and lie our way out of the mess we're in. The Orsinis are screwed, and you have to give it to China and Russia for doing such a good job infiltrating America and spreading communism. Because, well, a lot of the people now think communism is the way to go, and I don't think so, but. Well, if it has to come here to teach people another lesson, they're going to do it. Trump also signals openness to deal with Democrats on health care. He's open to deal with it. We're open. And who is Barry Weiss? You don't know who Barry Weiss is? Well, CBS News editor-in-chief is a vocal critic of legacy media. Well, who gives a shit? Judge appointed by Trump keeps ruling against him. He's not happy about it. I wouldn't be either. Didn't that put you into office? And here's where Trump has deployed National Guard troops to, or is trying to. Well, that's from the Washington Post. So, yeah, I think it's important that we know where they're going. So, here we go. It's Portland, Los Angeles, Chicago, D.C., Memphis, which is part of the Mississippi, Shreveport, Baton Rouge, and New Orleans. So, where all of the shipments are going. So, yeah, I see the map right here. Portland, Los Angeles, Chicago, Memphis, Shreveport, Baton Rouge, and New Orleans. Guys, these are all the ports, okay? And they're suing and trying to get Trump. And tonight we're going to talk all about what they're really trying to do. And I don't think you're going to get that anywhere else, especially on breaking shitty news. So we're going to go to a commercial. And when we get back, we're going to get straight into the show. It's a long one. And we're going to be talking about the ports and what I think Trump has going up his sleeve. But who knows? I mean, what do I know? I'm just a hick from Oregon.
Do you own a business? Would you like to pay next to nothing in taxes? Nelson Rockefeller quoted, "The secret to success is to own nothing but control everything." Basically, when you own something in your name, you also own the liabilities. Introducing the solution. Begin an unincorporated association and remove assets out of your name while remaining in control and management of them. An unincorporated association is a state-registered entity that you can put assets into, is member-based and not tied to your name, has a tax-exempt EIN number, and is private and not found when doing online search. Whether you receive a 1099 or K-1 under your name, consider setting up your own unincorporated association and allow the association to be the owner of your assets and free yourself from the burden of personal tax liability. Our clients are saving tens of thousands of dollars on taxes every year for the rest of their lives. Book a call with us and find out how we can do the same for you.
All right, we're back to the show. And yes, I do believe that Trump is going after all of the ports that China and Russia have, been buying out and have been not actually. What I think is happening is they're not collecting the tariffs for Trump, and Trump's pissed, so he's going after him. But we're going to talk all about that tonight. So they say America is not at war. No bombs are falling. No soldiers on beaches yet. No flags raised or lowered, but war has definitely changed over the years. Siege is no longer declared with catapults or columns. It's waged through contracts, silence, and compromise. And while the people sleep, the ports have been taken. The ports. This is why the National Guard are going to these cities. It's going to all of the ports. All the way up the Mississippi, right in the middle of America, and then on the left side and at the bottom. See, don't worry about the East Coast. Trump has control of those ports. But it's the West Coast that he doesn't. And it's the mid-America part he doesn't. So it's waged through contract, silence, and compromise. And while the people sleep, the ports have been taken. Now, you see, every city has a gate, and every gate is a covenant. And in the days of old, kings would sit at the gates, and prophets would cry aloud there, and enemies would lay siege just beyond them. Babylon knew this, Rome perfected it, and the empires of this age still build their strength upon it. Gates are not merely wood and iron. They are spiritual jurisdictions, portals where power possess and passes. Now, today, our gates are ports. Long Beach, Seattle, New York, Baltimore, San Francisco. These are not merely trade hubs. They are modern altars. in the religion of consumerism. And someone has been offering incense to another god upon them. The enemy has no need to fire a shot when he can lease the land. And he doesn't breach the wall, he buys the deed. Through shell corporations, offshore trusts, and interlocking family dynasties, the modern kings of Babylon move silently. The merchant kings, the financiers, the old bloodlines in new garments. And while our eyes are fixed on the elections, on protests, and on artificial chaos, the true war is being waged on shipping manifests, infrastructure bills, and secret agreements. Now, the government told us that the National Guard is there to stop the riots. But who command are they under? Why are governors fighting federal orders? Why are blue states resisting what they once embraced? Could it be that the lines have already been drawn and the ports are the prize? Well, in the days of Jeremiah, Babylon didn't need to burn the city. They actually starved it. They choked its trade. They took its gates, and the people inside perished without a single sword stroke. History is repeating itself, but this time under container ships and digital logistics. I don't think it's a conspiracy. I see the pattern here, and it is the same siege that once fell upon Jerusalem. The same spirit that animated Tyre, Carthage, and Nineveh. The only difference now, the gates glow with LED lights, and the priests no longer stand watch. But we are not blind, not you and me. The remnant sees what's going on, and the breath of God still speaks. And tonight we're going to expose the siege as we tear the veil from the silent invasion, and we call on the watchers, the intercessors, the seers and sons to take their stand again. Because Babylon is rising, and the siege has no flag. We tear the veil. We call on the intercessors. When I say the watchers, there are actual good watchers. I'm not talking about the ones that fell. And the seers and the sons are the prophets of today. So don't freak out. Now, from the very beginning, Scripture places strategic and spiritual weight upon gates. Genesis 22:17 tells Abraham that his descendants will possess the gate of their enemies. A prophetic statement of not just military dominance, but legal and spiritual authority. In ancient Israel, the gate of the city was the seat of power. It was where covenants were made, where elders judged, where prophets warned, and where kings declared their decrees. The gate was never just a door. It was a threshold between realms. And in the modern world, that spiritual archetype has not disappeared. It has actually evolved. Now, the city gates have become ports. These great hubs of economic exchange, customs inspection, international entry, and sovereign transaction. To control a port is to govern who enters, what resources are distributed, which laws are enforced, and whose name is honored. So it's no accident that nearly all of America's major port cities are also the cultural and political strongholds of secularism, technology, and globalist agendas. Now, the enemy knows where the gates are. And this is where Trump has been sending his troops to. Now, when you control a port, you can control policy. You can route fentanyl into the bloodstream of a generation. You can manipulate the flow of food, oil, microchips, or medicine. You can suppress or accelerate commerce. You can enrich your allies or starve your enemies, all without firing a single bullet. while the news is telling you, look over here to Jimmy Kimmel and look over here at the National Guard taking out rioters, Trump is going after the ports. But deeper still, the port functions as a spiritual altar. There are, believe it or not, principalities that guard those gates. And the ancients knew that trade was not neutral. It was an act of worship. Offerings were laid upon the docks. Incense and oil were burned in honor of gods who protected seafarers and merchants. The sea itself was seen as a realm of chaos, and those who mastered it, Tyre, Sidon, Carthage, Rome, were not just traders, but spiritual forces. Now, America, like Babylon of old, has opened its gates to every merchant king and every spiritual power cloaked in the garments of commerce. Long Beach, the largest port in the United States, handles over 9 million containers a year. Didn't Trump send the National Guard down there? He did. They're just not showing it now because he did that not too long ago. Behind every shipment is a contract, a foreign party, a set of legal bindings, most never read by the public, but enforced by global courts and hidden arbitrations. These are unseen covenants, binding the land to foreign lords. And who watches these gates? Who intercedes at the threshold? Where are the modern priests, the gatekeepers, the sons of Zadok? Well, if the port is the new gate, then the church must be the watchman. But the church is silent, as usual, distracted by debates, entertainment, splintered by division, and anesthetized by comfort. Believe me, dude, they've got mega churches. Are just insane. But the siege is subtle. But it is a siege nonetheless. And while politicians argue about immigration, while headlines stir up racial conflict, while narratives pit red against blue, the ports are being positioned. And once the gate is held, the city falls without a fight. It is written that in the last days, the kings of this earth will mourn the fall of Babylon. For in 1 hour her riches have come to nothing. The merchants will weep. Why? Why? Because they will lose access to the gates. And the remnant must rise with discernment, not with protest signs, but with prophetic vision. We must reclaim the understanding of these gates and borders and of the thresholds and altars that they really are. We must anoint the entry points. Christians must go and anoint the entry points, both natural and digital. But we must ask the Lord to restore the watchers at the walls here. Because until we identify the port as a gate, we will never understand the battle that we are in. Remember, this whole thing between the spiritual world and the physical world, it's a legal court case. And everything that Satan takes up to heaven is a court order or a lawsuit. And they're constantly going back and forth as he is called the accuser of the brethren. Now, the siege engine of the antiquity were terrifying constructs. They were battering arms, towers on wheels, flaming catapults that pounded city walls until they cracked. Armies would encamp for months, sometimes even years, surrounding a city, cutting off its food and water, breaking its spirit before breaking its gates. The strategy was slow, patient, and relentless. And this kind of thing was happening to America when George Bush became the CIA director. That is when China and Russia made an agreement with the Bush family to start buying up the ports. And what Bush promised was they'll make sure that they get a president that is under their authority and supervision. And this is how BRICS came about. And that ancient strategy, it never vanished. It actually adapted into what we see currently, where all of the blue states that are controlling ports are not doing any or not listening to federal orders and are basically standing up for their rights. But it's not for the people. It's actually for the enemy. And those blue states don't understand that the enemy is China. And Trump was right. Not that I'm a Trump supporter, but as far as freedom is concerned, if you want what America used to be, you'd want probably to have the Orsinis remain in control of America and not the Lee family. As I've told you, one is conservative, the other is liberal, and the liberal one gives you more rights and freedoms than the conservative ones. And the conservative ones are the Lee family, as they want a king to rule. Now, today, the siege engines are not built with timber and iron. They are assembled with supply chains, logistics software, shipping contracts, and energy dependencies. The battering rams have been replaced by economic choke points, and the tower no longer rises from the ground. It hovers silently in satellite surveillance and financial leverage. When a port is seized, it does not need to be taken by force. It can be leased. It can be subcontracted to an infrastructure partner. It can be bundled in a multi-year logistics management agreement with the foreign shell company. Once the ink is dry, the gate is theirs. No siege needed, no army visible. Whatever comes in and out of that place, they're the king of that port. And this is how modern Babylon lays siege to the nations, through debt, dependency, and the illusion of partnership. Now, the book of Lamentations mourns Jerusalem's fall, saying, her gates are desolate, her priests groan, her virgins are afflicted, and she is in bitterness. Why? Because her gates had been overtaken, first spiritually, then economically, and finally by the sword. Likewise, in our day, America is being surrounded, but not by tanks, but by supply lines designed by foreign architects. China, through its Belt and Road Initiative, has constructed over 100 port projects around the world, securing access to the Mediterranean, the Indian Ocean, and even the Caribbean. BRICS nations are building alternatives to SWIFT, forming energy alliances, and creating parallel trade systems meant to bypass the Western world. What's funny is Europe is buying oil from Russia. They won't tell you that, but they are. In America, the modern Rome, it sits unaware that the siege is not coming because it's already here. Consider the 2021 blockage of the Suez Canal by the Ever Given. A single ship, I think it was Evergreen, a single ship brought global trade to a complete halt. Remember, there were rumors about the Evergreen, and Hillary Clinton had people on there. Yeah, I don't know if that's true or not, but the Evergreen. Now, that event was not just a freak accident. It was a divine warning, a shadow of how fragile the system really is and how quickly Babylon's merchants could be silenced. Now, consider how easily a U.S. port can be choked, not with an army, but with a labor strike or a pandemic, with a cyber attack, with a legal injunction from a foreign-controlled arbitration court, with a data breach that stalls customs for 48 hours. You see, the siege doesn't even require boots on the ground. It only requires access to the switch. And they have that access. And meanwhile, our military is deployed not to defend ports, but to police protests. The spiritual gatekeepers are arguing over doctrine while the economic gates fall into foreign hands. The governors make deals with Chinese telecom firms while claiming to be resisting tyranny. And the people, confused, divided, and exhausted, they don't see the siege towers because they are dressed in business suits and speaking the language of commerce. But the Spirit sees it because this is no longer a game of ideologies. It is a spiritual war waged through material means. The Antichrist spirit is not just a politician. It is a machine, a network, a supply chain built to feed the image of the beast. And those who control the gates will decide who eats, who travels, who works, and who lives. The siege of old began with encampments outside the wall, so I've told you. The siege of today begins with the ports through the supply chain itself. Unless the church wakes up and understands the mechanics of modern-day warfare, we will find ourselves praying behind walls that are already compromised. The time to discern the new siege engines starts now. And the remnant must learn not just to fast and pray, but to read the contracts. Now, Babylon was not merely a city. It was a system. In Revelation 18, Babylon is described as a marketplace for kings and merchants, for gold and silver, and for the bodies and souls of men. It is the only place in Scripture where human souls are listed as a traded commodity. It says it. You are. Your Social Security card, your birth certificate. You're traded as a debt commodity by the Federal Reserve. This reveals something that should be chilling, that Babylon is not built only on trade, but on spiritual enslavement through commerce. The siege of our time is led not by generals, but by the merchant kings, men and families who do not sit on thrones but behind financial terminals. And their war is not fought with armies but with algorithms, with bonds, and binding contracts that move through unseen courts. And these are the lords of the ports and logistics, energy, food, and information, as their dominion is decentralized, but their reach is absolute. And I do believe that when Trump pulled all the generals from all of America's policing efforts worldwide, I believe that they all got a piece of paper, all the generals, that Trump is going to war against those who control the ports. These merchant kings, they're the modern priesthood of Babylon. And they do not wear robes. They wear tailored suits. Their temples are data centers, investment houses, hedge funds, and global shipping conglomerates. Their offerings are made in the form of acquisitions, stock buybacks, and leveraged takeovers. Their god is not Moloch or Baal, it is Mammon, cloaked in artificial intelligence, asset management, and the illusion of benevolence. Oh, and they have names. Look at Costco, C-O-S-C-O. the Chinese state-owned shipping giant quietly embedding itself into global port infrastructure. You've seen their cargo ships, haven't you? You've seen their cargo containers, haven't you? They're everywhere. Look to BlackRock, with its algorithms controlling trillions of dollars in assets and its tendrils in every freaking government pension fund. Look at Maersk, DP World, China Merchants, Evergreen, APM Terminals, all tentacles in a sea beast that spans continents. Yet behind these corporations are ancient names, the bloodlines who never relinquished their hunger for dominion. The Orsini, the Breakspear, the Rothschilds, the descendants of Venetian bankers and Roman priests, now are reincarnated as board chairs and central bank governors. And they play both sides, East and West. Some backed by the BRICS, others backed by the dollar. But all serve the throne of the merchant kings. Ezekiel 27 gives us the lamentation for Tyre, another merchant empire that ruled the seas. With your wisdom and your understanding, you have gained riches for yourself, it says, and gathered gold and silver into your treasuries. By your great wisdom in trade, you increased your riches, and your heart is lifted up because of your riches. Wow. Does that sound familiar? America, like Tyre, has allowed herself to be governed not by prophets or priests, but by economists, technocrats, and venture capital. The port of the United States are no longer under sovereign authority. They are operated by multinational entities with allegiances to shareholders and global stakeholders, not to the Constitution or to God. The merchant kings of today have rewritten the laws of sovereignty. In their system, a state does not fall by invasion, it falls by merger. A port is not seized, it's optimized. And a generation is not enslaved by chains, it is enslaved by debt, dopamine, data, and distraction. And this is why Babylon's fall will be so violent and sudden. Revelations 18 even declares, and the kings of the earth who committed fornication and lived luxuriously with her will weep and lament for her. And the merchants of the earth will weep and mourn over her, for no one buys their merchandise anymore. Well, they weep because their God falls. Their system collapses. Their power disintegrates. But until that hour comes, the church must see clearly who rules the gates. Not governors, not presidents, but merchants. And behind the merchants, the spirit of Babylon, offering souls upon digital altars. We are not called to imitate their system. We are called to stand outside of it, to come out of her, lest we share in her plagues, like taking the shots. To name the merchant kings, not just in protest, but in prayer, in repentance, and intercession. Because when Babylon falls, it is the prayers of the saints that actually bring her down. And there's a Chinese dragon in American harbors today. A dragon does not always roar when it enters a nation either. Sometimes it docks silently under a foreign flag, embedded in a contract, hiding behind a corporate veil. It brings no troops, only shipping containers. No invasion, only investment. And yet by the time it is discovered, the city is already compromised. The Chinese Communist Party, operating through state-owned entities like Costco, China Merchants Port, and Hutchison Holdings, has pursued a decades-long strategy of global port acquisition, from Africa to Europe, South America to South Pacific. China has methodically secured access to maritime gateways. But this is not trade. It is a tactical infrastructure, a digital, economic, and logistical siege that advances without any resistance. And these ports are not simply landing zones for goods. They are command posts for global influence. Each one secured gives China a new foothold for its navy, its surveillance networks, and its Belt and Road agreements. And now we must ask ourselves, how close is the dragon to American shores? Well, the answer is closer than the church has dared to even look. In the early 2000s, China gained significant influence over the port of Long Beach, the largest container port in the United States, through an agreement with the Chinese firm known as China Ocean Shipping Company, or COSCO. A 40-year lease was quietly granted for a terminal known as the Port of Long Beach Container Terminal. It took over a decade for national security experts to realize the implications. It took 10 years for the CIA, NSA, FBI, and any other of the alphabet soup idiot agencies to fucking figure out that this probably is a bad idea. No wonder why California doesn't listen to anyone but China. Eventually, under pressure, Costco was forced to divest in 2019. But the shadow of that deal, it still lingers. Because, hey, who approved that? Why did no one notice that a foreign power hostile to American values and openly preparing for war in the Pacific had leased a strategic port in a major U.S. city? Now, extend this pattern. In Panama, China controls port terminals at both ends of the canal. Both ends! In Mexico, they are building rail and port infrastructure near the U.S. border under the guise of trade. In the Caribbean, China has signed development deals in Jamaica and the Bahamas, right off the Florida coast. And in the Arctic, Chinese shipping routes are being normalized through Russian alliances, forming a northern corridor for both goods and naval power. They're not isolated deals here, folks. They are tentacles of a single beast working under one spirit. China doesn't like you. They hate Americans. Not the Chinese people, but the Chinese leadership. And while the American church debates elections and denominational differences, foreign powers are setting up spiritual altars at our gates, on our borders. And what's more concerning is how deeply these Chinese entities are now embedded within blue state economies. California has openly partnered with Chinese tech firms. Oregon and Washington have foreign-funded green initiatives. Foreign funded. Yes, Oregon and Washington State both took American money from their own taxpayers in Oregon and Washington and outsourced green initiatives to other countries. Well, just one, China. And New York's tech and finance sectors are increasingly beholden to Chinese capital. These alliances are not just economic, they are a covenant. It's a ritual. And just as Solomon was seduced by foreign treaties, so too have America's governors bowed to the altar of global commerce. But in truth, they're inviting a dragon to co-rule the gate. Who's stopping China from just shipping a bunch of soldiers in containers? I know it sounds stupid, but why not? And do it for 10 years while they build an army somewhere where the satellites can't get to them or where they have control. Like on land that they purchased. How do we know they don't have underground cities? Just waiting for the Chinese to pop up from under the ground. I don't think so. But you never know. And to the politicians, they believe they are making progress. But in truth, they are inviting a dragon to co-rule that gate. And yet, the spiritual implications are far greater than the political ones. Revelations 12 tells us the dragon is cast down. And in Revelations 13, it rises again. But this time given power to the beast. The sea beast emerges only after the dragon has planted itself among the nations. Well, is that BRICS? And this is not a myth, it's a pattern. The dragon first comes through the sea, through the ports, and through the gate. And the people of God must understand this. Ports are no longer neutral, people. Harbors are no longer safe. The gate has been compromised and, well, Georgie Poo let it happen. Yes, the Bush family, George Sr., did the deal through Skull and Bones, through Yale, to partner with China and Russia to help them get their own central bank to compete against the Federal Reserve. We're not called to fear any of this. We're not. We are called to discern it, expose it, and intercede for it. You see, my job is to find out what's going on. Your job is to pray over it. You guys understand? This is what we are supposed to be doing in these times. You see, I don't have a big following, but I do know that once a week, well, every day, eventually it catches up. But about 500 people watch my videos every day. That's on Rumble. So that's 500 people who it's their job to get the information that I provide to them and pray about it, to intercede and discern, expose it, and pray about it. Because we're not called for fear, we're called to discern. Because until the dragon is confronted, America cannot be healed. And maybe all it takes is 500 people to pray the same prayer. Lord, stop China from controlling our ports. Stop China from controlling the blue states. Get us back to sovereignty in the United States. Now, there's a pattern hidden in plain sight, guys. It's a geopolitical, spiritual triangulation connecting America's most influential blue states to foreign powers. Through the gates of commerce, Oregon, California, Washington, and New York. These are not just liberal political zones. They are the nerve centers of international trade, data, finance, culture, and most critically, ports. And Trump needs to get control of that. And each of these states houses major maritime gateways. And each of these states is actively resisting federal authority. Gee, what a coincidence. Each of these states is entangled financially or ideologically with foreign nations, particularly China. But more than just politics, this is a gatekeeping war. The struggle is not over ideology, it's over who controls the entry points into the American body. If the port is the mouth of the nation, then these states have become the lips through which all breath, all food, all trade, and all digital signal must pass. Let's take them one by one. California is home to the Port of Los Angeles and the Port of Long Beach, handling over 40% of all inbound U.S. container traffic. 40%. One state. For years, Chinese state-linked companies leased terminals there. Though some of these contracts were reversed under national security concerns, foreign capital still flows freely into California's tech sector, housing markets, and infrastructure deals. The state's loyalty increasingly is not to the union, but to its own global interests. Oregon and their city of Portland, the port, has become a microcosm of spiritual siege. Federal law enforcement has clashed with local officials. National Guard movements have been blocked or redirected, and Chinese tech influence, renewable energy investment, and green infrastructure grants continue to intertwine with local policy. And the city's resistance to federal intervention isn't just political, it's jurisdictional. Who has jurisdiction over any of this? They are asserting control over the gate. Washington State, with its massive port of Seattle, is a gateway to the Pacific Rim. It has long-standing sister city relationships and direct trade routes with Chinese municipalities. Its largest corporations, Amazon, Microsoft, they depend on supply chains deeply interwoven with Chinese manufacturing. Behind the veil of logistics lies dependency, and dependency is the leash by which sovereignty is lost. Like Bill Gates and all of his shit. In New York, host to the port of New York and New Jersey, is not just an economic center, it is the financial altar of the Western world. Wall Street, the Federal Reserve, the United Nations, and dozens of foreign consulates, they all converge there. And the city does not move by national interest, but by international convergence. Its ports handle massive volumes of European and transatlantic cargo that increasingly comes with strings attached. So I must ask, are these blue states acting as independent provinces in a rising global empire? Have their governors become regional satraps serving a different king? I don't think this is wild speculation. I think this is a scriptural pattern. We've seen this before in the Bible. In the days of Daniel, Babylon ruled through provincial governors, satraps, and regional kings who answered to one throne. These officials were empowered to rule locally, but their allegiance was to the empire. When the decree was sent out to worship the image, it was these governors who enforced it. Wear your mask. 6 feet apart. Closed down, but Costco can stay open. Likewise, in Revelation 17, the beast is said to have 10 horns, 10 kings who receive authority for 1 hour with the beast. I think those may be central banks. These blue states are aligning themselves not simply against federal authority, but toward a globalist model of governance. A model where cities answer not to nations, but to international treaties, environmental accords, and financial alliances. And the ports, they are the temples through which these offerings are made. It's spiritual. Believe me, they've got tons of spiritual covens, witches, warlocks that are protecting those ports in the name of Satan. Not in the name of Jesus Christ or free trade. It's in the name of globalism for the Messiah to come. Ports are the same place where the new priesthood of technocrats, financiers, and global managers conduct their rites. And they do it through balancing trade, importing surveillance tech, and exporting ideological influence through media and entertainment. And while the church sleeps, because you are, these altars are being defiled. The remnant must recognize the blue state's nexus not merely as a political opposition, but as a spiritual architecture of the rising beast system. The red-blue divide is not about Democrat versus Republican. It's about who has the spiritual jurisdiction over the gates into America. We're not called to take sides in a human war, folks. But we are called to stand at the threshold and proclaim the name of the Lord. When we must anoint these gates, okay? If any of you guys live near these ports, please go anoint the ports with oil. We must call the watchman to that wall. You must go there and pray over that site. Lay your hands on the ground and say it belongs to Jesus Christ and the kingdom of heaven. We've got to expose the alliances that are made in darkness, because what appears as political disagreement is actually the fracture line between two kingdoms. And the ports are dividing the line here. Now, while American eyes have been trained on elections, scandals, and border debates, another power quietly grown in formation, and that's BRICS. Originally a loose economic alliance between Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, has now become a geopolitical axis of 10 countries. Not bound by ideology, but by opportunity. Not fueled by diplomacy, but by shared resistance to the Western order. And beneath its banner, the infrastructure of a new world is being built. But this is not a league of nations. It is a body with many heads, waiting to empower the beast. The leaders of BRICS do not need to declare war. They simply need to build systems that bypass the old ones, and they have. They have created currency baskets to replace the dollar. They are building fiber optic cables that bypass Western networks. I know, because there's one that comes from China to Portland. They are developing satellite systems, AI governance, supply chain backbones, and port alliances to move goods, information, and people without touching Babylon's walls. Yes, they're moving people. Human trafficking is real. It's not speculation. This is happening under your nose. And the BRICS cable, a 34,000-kilometer submarine telecommunication system, it links Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa outside U.S. and EU jurisdiction. And new development bank loans are funding railways, smart cities, and blockchain-based ID systems all across Africa and Asia. Ports under Chinese influence are being upgraded with facial recognition, biometric customs, and AI-driven logistics, all in the name of efficiency. But make no mistake, these are siege weapons. They're not designed to destroy cities. They're designed to make them obsolete, to route trade, energy, and data away from the Western-controlled port, banks, and cloud servers, to make Babylon irrelevant before it even falls. And this is why American ports are the last frontier. As Long Beach, Seattle, New York, Houston, Norfolk, these are the remaining strongholds in a game where BRICS seeks to build a separate global nervous system, one that can survive without the Western capital, law, or military power. If they could take these ports, whether through investment, legislation, or subversion, the siege becomes complete. This is why Trump is sending the National Guard to these cities. And that's why California's deep ties with China matters. Why Oregon and Washington's resistance to federal troops movements matter. Why New York's financial entanglement with foreign capital matters. Because they sit on gateways that BRICS cannot afford to leave outside the system. And in the spiritual realm, we need to recognize what this is and pray about it. It is the rebuilding of a false temple, not in Jerusalem, but in global infrastructure. A temple of trade, data, and biometric identity. A temple not of stone, but of code and commerce. The beast does not rise from a pit of fire. It rises from the systems of control we allowed to take root. Revelation 13 says, "The beast causeth all to receive a mark that no man buyeth or selleth." Well, that prophecy is not just about a chip or a barcode. It's about infrastructure control, ports, payment systems, digital ledgers, trade routes. And BRICS is building it now on our land. And the church must abandon the illusion that the final war will be fought on battlefields. It probably is going to be fought in boardrooms and data centers and infrastructural development contracts. The kings of this earth are no longer crowned, they're contracted. So what do? Well, if you're not praying, especially over all the information that I'm giving you guys, then you're not doing what God needs you to do. See, I expose it, you guys pray over it. We expose the beast while it is still under construction, because it's not fully developed yet. And believe me, if the West goes, the East will come in and it'll be worse. If the East goes, the West will remain for a little while longer till the East finally figures out a way to get around the West again. But they're not going to stop. We must expose the beast while it's still under construction. We prophetically interpret infrastructure for what it really is. It's the nervous system of the coming image. And we intercede at every gate, physical or digital, before it's sealed against the remnant. Because if the ports fall, the priesthood must rise. Now, beneath the surface of the global politics lies a more ancient war. We talked about this many times on my show. One that does not appear on electoral maps or even news broadcasts. It is a conflict not between countries, but between bloodlines. The illusion of East versus West. Democracy versus communism. Capitalism versus socialism. These are all distractions. The true war is a dynastic struggle among those who believe they are born to rule. And at the center of this hidden battle are two thrones, the Orsini family and the Lee family. One represents the old Roman Empire, reborn through the black nobility, the Orsini, Breakspear, Farnese, and Aldobrandini lineages, who controlled the papacy, banking, and the Holy See. The other represents the Eastern technocratic priesthood, the Lee family, stretching through Chinese imperial bloodlines, communist aristocracy, and elite diasporas now embedded in Silicon Valley, Vancouver, Singapore, and beyond. These are families without borders, hidden in plain sight, working through proxies, governments, corporations, NGOs, and think tanks. And they are both fighting for control of the United States, the last remaining obstacle to world centralization. Not for its land, but for its gates, its ports, its soul. Remember when I interviewed Russell-J. Gould, the godfather of sovereignty, who took the Title IV battle flag from the Pentagon, who handed it over to them, and then they seized all of the land underneath the court system and went up against the CIA and eventually lost. Well, Russell was right. In order to control America, you've got to control and be the postmaster of all commerce that comes in. And he had the right idea. He just didn't take it to the right people. You don't take it straight to the Vatican. And you don't take it to the United Nations. You take it directly to the military. I believe that if Russell would have taken it to the military, we would be living in a different world right now. The Orsini-led families embedded in Western institutions, the Vatican banking, Jesuit academia, the City of London, all have used the American military, their intelligence agencies, and Wall Street as tools for centuries. They financed both sides of global wars, they seeded revolutions, and designed the Federal Reserve itself. Their influence can be traced in Skull and Bones, the Council on Foreign Relations, and Trilateral Commission. Trilateral. But now a challenge has emerged. The Lee axis, which is L-I and L-E-E, which the Lee, L-I, is short for Lancelotti, which they got the blessings through the Breakspears of the Knights Templar. That's where they got their breadth of control. The Lee axis under the blessing of BRICS and the strategic patience of Chinese dynastic vision has entered the field, not through war, but through technology, infrastructure, and long-term economic siege. Ports, semiconductors, electric grids, quantum networks, and logistics. And while the Orsini once ruled through religion and ritual, the Lee family rules through algorithms and data. The American church does not see this because it has been trained to think in terms of Republican and Democrats. Not my fault. It took me a while to wake up out of it. Not ancient houses of power, but the remnant must go deeper. So consider this. Why are blue states, where Lee family influence runs thickest through Silicon Valley, biotech, and global real estate, the most resistant to federal authority? Ask this question. Why is the Vatican quiet, even passive, when BRICS restructures the world? Ask yourself this. Why are families like the Rockefellers and Rothschilds investing in both Western and Eastern markets simultaneously? Because the old Western order is being negotiated, not preserved. America is the divided empire, the battlefield of the modern Rome. East and West now meet on her soil, not in Congress, but in the control of infrastructure. Ports are where these families intersect, where contracts are signed, where allegiances shift. The remnant must understand this, that these families do not need armies, they have corporations. They don't need spies, they have data. They don't need kings, they have boards and directors with ancient surnames and modern influence. David wrote in Psalm, "Why do the kings of the earth take counsel together?" Are you kidding me? King David wrote that. Why do the kings of the earth take counsel together? Well, we learned that they do at the Bank for International Settlements, don't they? And here's the final answer: to break the cords of the Lord and set up their own dominion. And it's not fiction. It's not fantasy. It's unfolding prophecy. And the ports of America are the chessboard. The Orsini want to preserve their control of Rome's western flank. The Lee family wants to finish what Mao and the ancient dragon priests began. And that is a technocratic kingdom rising from the east, feeding the beast system. And their war will not be televised. It'll all be revealed only to those with eyes to see and ears to hear. You and I. And the remnant? We do not choose sides in their war. We declare the kingdom of our God and prepare to stand as priests when both thrones fail and fall. And when the enemy surrounds a city, the watchmen look to the outer walls. But what if the siege begins from within? Obviously. What if the gatekeepers are no longer loyal? What if the army that once defended the city is now divided, with one half answering to the empire and the other to the merchants who bought the land? Well, this is the spiritual condition of the United States today. What are we witnessing in real time? The federal deployment of National Guard units across state lines, the legal resistance of blue state governors, the conflict over jurisdiction and troop authority. It's not simple politics. It is the revelation of a kingdom divided against itself. And it's on the brink of a strategic collapse. In July of 2025, the Trump administration ordered California's National Guard into Oregon after a federal judge blocked the use of Oregon's own troops. An official explanation: to assist in ICE operations and to quell rising unrest. But in truth, it was an act of bypass, a direct override of state sovereignty. Now, the question no one is asking here is, why now? Why here? Why Portland? Well, the answer lies in the convergence of spiritual gates and economic control. Oregon's ports are small compared to Los Angeles or Seattle, but they sit at the intersection of radical political ideology, foreign investment, and militant jurisdictional resistance. It's not a city of protest, it's a city of siege, not by banners or bullets, but by entrenchment. And what are we seeing? What we're seeing here is a test run. What happens when the state refuses to cooperate with federal mandates? Well, they double their taxes. That's what Tina Kotek is doing. Doubling payroll tax. Because can't remember how many billions, 10 billion that they used to receive from the federal government for their schools and all this other stuff, well, they're just going to tax the people for it. That's going to go over really well. And what happens when governors align more with globalist stakeholders and their own National Guard and their own people? And what happens when the chain of command fractures? Well, Tina Kotek was standing in front of a bunch of graffiti shipping containers as she was declaring that we don't need the National Guard. But that was a tall tale sign of who she is allegiant to, the shipping containers. The Chinese have taken over Portland. And Trump is going after him, the actual enemy of the United States of America. America's National Guard was never meant to police its own people, but that is exactly what it's being positioned to do. Not to suppress rioters, but to manage a quiet rebellion between blue and red, between global allegiance and national sovereignty, between digital empire and constitutional covenant. You know I'm right. These Antifa fuckers, there's just a couple of people. And they're being paid to riot. Good God, dude, you could send the Navy SEALs in and they would wipe them out without anybody even seeing it. They're paid protesters. They're paid agitators, probably from Soros. Every major port has a militarized component. There's custom and borders protection. There's the Coast Guard. There's the federal marshals. There's fusion centers. The infrastructure of control is already there. All that remains is an event, a trigger that justifies full deployment, lockdown, and redefinition of the gate. And in that moment, it will not matter who the president is. It will matter what the people vote. Or it won't matter what the people vote. Never has anyway. What will matter is who controls the port. This is why Trump is there. I'm positive. And this is why troops are already moving, pre-positioned, not for riot control, but for transition control. They will say it's to stop chaos. They will say it's to keep the peace. But spiritually, it is the hand of Babylon tightening its grip through infrastructure, through contract law, and through soldiers who no longer answer to a covenant of people, but to technocratic overlords. This is the internal siege. Like Jerusalem before its fall, the divisions are no longer ideological. They are tribal. Factions within the priesthood. Watchmen turning their backs to the temple. Levites siding with Babylon because they fear the loss of comfort more than the loss of covenant. In Lamentations, Jeremiah wept as the city fell, not because it was conquered by force, but because its own defenders had given up on the gate. So what does the remnant do? We return to our post. We intercede at the gates, not with protest, but with authority. We just walk in there and we pray over the land, pray over the sea. We declare the world, or we declare the word over the cities even as the siege closes in. Because even if America fractures, the kingdom of God does not retreat. And when the National Guard stands divided, the angels of the Lord still stand united for those who fear his name, you and me. we'll be fine. This message isn't for the Christians. It's for you to pray, yes, but it's also for those people out there who don't know what in the hell's going on. And I feel blessed that God has given me discernment and eyes to see and ears to hear to tell you what really is going on. Because believe me, guys, the information that you're getting is top secret. When the final kingdom rises, it will not do so by violence. It will rise by offering peace. Not the peace of God, but the peace of control. It's a counterfeit claim and a counterfeit calm that's coming. It's a silence that comes not from the stillness of the spirit, but from the muzzling of dissent. And it will come dressed in the garments of efficiency, sustainability, and safety. And this is the false peace of Babylon. And its high priests are not prophets, but programmers. They're not watchmen, they're economists. They're not intercessors, they're data scientists. In the book of Daniel, the last empire is described as different from all the others. A beast that crushes, breaks, and devours with iron teeth. But unlike Babylon or Persia, it doesn't rise by conquest. It rises by system. And it speaks great things, but not with armies, but with decrees, laws, and technologies that redefine the very structure of life. This is the technocratic siege we now face. And again, the Bank for International Settlements doesn't care who wins, the Lees or the Orsinis. We're all going towards the CBDC, central bank digital control. And the ports right now are the gateway to if the Lee family are going to profit or if the Orsini. And under the guise of modernization, ports are being equipped with facial recognition, AI-driven custom systems, blockchain-based cargo tracking, and biometric worker verification. It's not innovation. It's an infrastructure for domination, as every port becomes a node in the beast's body. Every shipment, every data point, every person, every programmable identity. And as trade becomes digitized, so too does access to life itself. Without the right credentials, without the proper scan, without the approved registry, no man may buy or sell. Revelation 13. That's not a metaphor. It is a supply chain reality already being tested, refined, and normalized. And the church has not discerned this because it has been trained to view the end times through the lens of political messiahs and visible persecution. But the enemy is smarter than that. He comes as a solution, not a threat. He offers food during famine, feed during protest, climate justice in exchange for your sovereignty. And the ports are his altar. Don't shout me down for preaching good. You see, in the days of Solomon, the king made silver as common as stones. But his trade routes with Egypt, Tyre, and Sheba came at a huge cost. He took foreign wives, adopted foreign gods, and compromised the covenant of God. Peace came at an expense of purity. So it's now. Same thing's happening. America deals with China, BRICS, and global institutions, and they're not just economic, they are spiritual. And they are adoption of foreign order, the acceptance of a system that promises trade without borders, prosperity without repentance, peace without Christ. This is the deception of technocratic Babylon. And this is why the ports are being fortified, not just physically, but digitally. In the name of security, scanners are installed. In the name of health, biometrics are enforced. In the name of speed, AI governs the flow of goods. But these are not improvements. They are consecrations. They're rituals of obedience to the beast. And when the mark is finally enforced, it will not feel like tyranny. It will feel like the natural conclusion of what the world already accepted. Unless you guys expose it now. We must reject the false peace. We must see that the port is not just a loading dock, it is the entry point to the kingdom. We must proclaim Christ at the gates, not with anger, but with holy fire and reverence. Because the days are coming when the system will demand your breath. The cost to live in utopia is your allegiance to Jesus Christ. And only those sealed by God will be able to withstand this, to actually stand and turn around and say no. So the breach is not coming. It's already here. It occurred, thanks to Bush Sr. The siege is not future tense. It's now. The ports, the gates, the data lines, the custom offices, the supply routes all have been infiltrated, digitized, and spiritually compromised. The silence of war is deafening. But the remnant is not called to retreat. The remnant is called to watch the gates and reclaim them. Serious. In the days of Ezekiel, when the glory of God departed from the temple, he didn't command the prophet to build a protest. He commanded him to measure the gates, to mark the thresholds, to prophesy against the abominations happening in secret chambers between the porch and the altar. That's what he did. So too must we begin there. We must go there, measure, and protect, and declare. We must prophesy against the abominations. First, we must anoint the gates. Every city has spiritual portals. Every point where covenants were made, where powers are exchanged. These gates are physical. Ports, airports, custom stations, digital, fiber optic nodes, satellite hubs, and human, government agencies, priesthoods. We must pray over all of them, walk their parameters, speak scripture at their threshold, declare that the earth is the Lord's, not Costco's, not BlackRock's, not BRICS, and not Babylon's. Second, the church in America has traded her authority at the gates for comfort in the courts. She sits no longer at the city wall. She performs on stages and live streams. The church has allowed foreign gods to speak through her pulpits and foreign ideologies to disciple her own children. The remnant must cleanse the temple before we reclaim the gate. Third, we must discern the false peace. Every time the beast system offers convenience, efficiency, or digital advancements, we must ask, what am I giving up in exchange for this? What we accept, or when we accept surveillance in the name of safety, when we yield sovereignty for stimulus, when we ignore infiltration for the sake of normalcy, we are bowing to the image. The remnant must live counter to this flow, discerning the contract, resisting the compromise, and walking in prophetic clarity. Fourth, we must restore the role of the watchman. Watchmen are not alarmists. They are intercessors with vision. They must train prophets again to stand at the city edges, to weep over the broken hedges, to warn not just of political shifts, but of spiritual sieges, to call leaders to account, even if the world calls them mad. Who's praying for the porch right now? Fifth, we need to prepare to feed the flock in famine. You see, the ports will shut, the ships will seize, the supply chains will collapse, and when they do, the people will look for bread. It happened to Germany. The remnant must be ready not only with food and water, but with the word of the Lord. untainted by politics, untouched by propaganda, and rooted in fire. We will become the storehouses, the Josephs, the altars of truth amid engineered famine. And finally, we must fear not. Yeah, the siege is terrifying. Yeah, sure. But it was also prophesied. And just as God preserved his remnant in Jerusalem and Babylon and Rome, and through every empire that rose and fell, he will preserve us. You're scared because your faith isn't tickling your heart. And this isn't because you hid. It's because, and you were scared, because at one time you stood at the gate unmoved, anointed, and awake, and then someone hurt you. Someone hurt you, the church or a person. Forgiveness is all you can grab a hold of in order to move forward and do God's will. It wasn't the church that hurt you. It wasn't the person that hurt you. It's the enemy. And it was the person or church blindly following without faith. You can get that faith back by forgiving. Forgive them. Stand at the gate, unmoved, stand anointed, and awake, sober. For it is written, lift up your heads, O ye gates, and ye be lifted up, ye everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in. If you want to know what's going on in the world today, right now, all of the ports that are saying, we don't want to do what the federal government says because we hate Trump. What's happening is Trump is going in and he's going to secure those ports. And if he shuts them down, then the powers that be, if he's really against the Orsinis, if he shuts down the ports, shuts everything down, then we will starve like Germany did. And what led to that was the Second World War. So lift up your heads, O ye gates. The ports may fall, Babylon may rise, but the glory will return to the gate if we are there to welcome Jesus Christ. There is no trumpet when this kind of war begins. Okay? This kind of war is a repetition that's happened throughout history over and over and over and over. We're in debt. We don't have the money to pay it off. Now, those want their money back. What we're going to do is we're going to seal everything off and say, come get it. That's what's happening. There are no soldiers storming the beaches. There's no headlines screaming invasion. The siege that we now face does not sound like cannon fire. It hums, it blinks, and it signs digital contracts in boardrooms, not blood. It's a different kind of war. We're in a different kind of time. And yet the outcome of it is the same. A nation overtaken, not by force, but by forgetting. Forgetting the covenant that we made when we founded this nation. One nation under God. Should be one nation under Jesus Christ, or Yahweh, or the Holy Ghost. We forgot our covenant. We forgot who the gatekeepers were. We haven't been praying for gatekeepers to protect our borders and protect our ports. We forgot who owns the land. God does. Babylon rises not on the backs of warriors, but on the blindness of the priests. We have watched silently as our ports were leased to foreign powers. We've cheered as our governors made alliances with the same hands that prepare the chains. We did. We have cheered. And we slept with technocrats built a temple with no altar, a peace with no Messiah, and a commerce with no conscience. But the remnant is no longer asleep. I'm not. Are you? I see what's going on. And God has given me the discernment to report it to you. We see the siege, but not with carnal eyes, but with prophetic vision. We know the ports are not neutral ground. They are spiritual high places. We understand that the National Guard is not just shifting troops. They are preparing for a moment of transition, a crossing of jurisdiction, a spiritual split in the land. And now we speak to the watchman. Rise up and warn. If God has called you to be a watchman, then rise up and start warning people. Trump is going to seal off the ports from China and Russia. To the gatekeepers, anoint and guard those ports. If God has called you to be a gatekeeper, you live near one of those ports where the National Guard are going in, not to break up riots. They're going in to seize control over the logistics and the monies that China has been giving Oregon, Washington, California, Illinois, and all other states up and down the Mississippi for the shipments. If you're called to be a gatekeeper, anoint and guard that area. If you are an intercessor, if you intercede, groan and declare, if that's what God has called you to do. To the elders, if you are called to be an elder, repent and return back to the Lord. To the governors who still fear the Lord, break the covenants made in secret and consecrate the city. Because the siege has no flag, but the kingdom does. Because Babylon has ports, but the king has gates. Because the beast has networks, but the lamb has his blood. And that blood speaks louder. Let the remnant prepare. Get ready. Trump is going to war with Russia and China economically right now at our ports. And let the church rise as gatekeepers again. And here's another thing. Henry Gruber prophesied that China would come through our ports in the 80s, through the Columbia River, to invade America, through the water. Maybe Trump is preparing for that invasion. Let every port be reclaimed as an altar for the Lord Jesus Christ, and let every city hear the sound of watchmen on the wall. Start getting on TikTok and telling people what's really going on. Get on X, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. For the day is coming when the ships of Tarshish will be broken, when the merchants will weep, when the system will fall, and the King of glory will enter the gate again, and we will be completely ready.
Why do 75% of people feel exhausted all the time? The answer might surprise you. In the 1920s, Standard Oil decided to dive into medicine. They pushed synthetic petroleum into our drugs. Sure, it masked symptoms, but it wrecked our guts. Our good bacteria, which fight off parasites and heavy metals, got wiped out by crude oil. But here's the good news. We can fix this by going back to nature. Introducing Elite Potion, the world's top detox program. It restores your good bacteria by removing toxic threats like aluminum, strontium, barium, and parasites. Imagine feeling energized and alive again. They said there couldn't be a pill that did it all. We invented it. Visit elitepotion.com and reclaim your health from synthetic pharmaceuticals. Your body will thank you.
This has been Cause Before Symptom. I'm your host, James Carner. Tune in tomorrow night when God gives me another revelation to tell you guys all about. God bless you, God keep you, and God thank you for supporting my show. Go to jamescarner.com, sign up to my newsletter. That's the only way I can get a hold of you if something happens. Also, I have books there. Download them. They're free. Go to elitepotion.com and sign up for my award-winning detox program of heavy metals and parasites. It's what's killing the temple. This will clean it up. And if you could all do me one big favor, if you could all just try to love your neighbor, well, I do believe this world would be a better place. We'll see you tomorrow night.